Hi, and welcome to the Book Refuge, and today I have a video for you that I am really excited to be taking on, and that is my favorite read so far this year, because we're halfway through the year already. I don't know how this happened. And I have 8 books to share with you. They are all 5 stars, but it is not all of my 5 stars, because a lot of my 5 stars were rereads, as well as they were romance novels that I really liked, but they didn't necessarily mean they were the favorite books of the year for me. And I'm really excited because there's some really different ones on here, and I'm very excited to share them with you. So without further ado, we'll get into this. So the first favorite read for me was The Iron Flower by Lori Forrest. So I just loved this story so much. So the Black Witch is the first one in this, and there's a lot of controversy about that story. A lot of people don't like how it is told. They feel that the main character is spoiled and rude and really racist, and I think you can interpret it that way. However, for me, there's a purpose for her being that way, because she's very isolated. She's been told only certain things her whole life, and then she meets these new races of people, and they live up to the things she's heard because they think she's stuck up and they think she's an oppressor, and so they're very cruel to her, and she doesn't know any better. So that's what happens in the first book. I love the first book too, but I also think I read it last year. Well, then I read The Iron Flower, and it really showed as the main character started to grow and realize that these biases were false and that people were telling her to feel that way, but she didn't actually feel that way. And she just grows and matures and becomes such a warrior for the underprivileged and for people who are being oppressed, and I love her. I know I'm not giving you super details about these stories, but I really loved it. I mean, it's about a witch, and about the witches are above everyone else, kind of like I said. And, there's one witch who she's supposed to be the most powerful one there ever was, like her grandmother before her, but her grandmother was basically evil, and she doesn't want to follow in those footsteps. And the choices that she makes to live her life differently, and I really loved it. So I stand by these series. These books get a lot of hate, and a lot of people are hating on them. They didn't even read them. If you look at the Goodreads, you'll see, what the rating is, and you'll see there's a lot of people who rated it without reading it and experiencing that for themselves. And so for me, I adore it, and I can't wait for the third and final book, which sadly doesn't come out until the beginning of 2020. But that's okay. But there is a set of 2 prequel novellas that I just haven't got to yet because I'm not ready for them. But anyway, then the next favorite read for me is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I dug my heels in for this. I did not want to read this book, but I ended up reading. I have a dedicated review for this one as well, which of course I will link up above for you. But I dug my heels in this. I didn't want to read it, but it got picked for me to read it during a 24-hour readathon I did for myself. And I really loved it. It just made me ache. It made you look at some hard truths, and it was amazing. So if you haven't heard yet, Beartown is translated fiction. It's translated from Swedish, I believe. And Frederick Bachman, yeah, he's from Sweden. And this is about a rape of a young girl by the star hockey player in the town. And everyone wants her to be quiet about it. They don't believe her. They say she deserved it. But she knows she didn't, and she's willing to stand up and say something about it. And it affects so many people in this town, people you wouldn't think that it did. There was someone who saw what happened, and he tells the truth, but people don't want to believe him either, because he has a crush on this girl that it happened to. So people are saying, well, you just want her to love you, so that's why you're saying that, and all these awful, horrible things, because this town, the only thing they have going for it is hockey. And the choices people make is scary, and wow. But I loved it so much. It's not the kind of book I would normally read, but I really want to read the sequel to this, which is called Us Against You, which kind of deals with the aftermath. This was a hard book to read, and I'm not emotionally prepared to read more of it, but it's beautiful prose. It is so beautifully written without the beautiful writing getting in the way, which is what happens in a lot of books for me. So I adored this. Great. You should check it out. Next up, I have my first ever graphic novel that I read, and that series is called Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I won't keep this up here too long because the glare in my window is really bad. But this is a series. There's 9 volumes out right now. Hopefully they're going to write another one because it had a horrible cliffhanger to me. But I read all 9 of these volumes within 2 days. It was my first graphic novel and I loved it. So this is about a man and a woman of 2 different species. They're warring species, and they fall in love, get married, and have a baby named Hazel. Yeah, look it. Badass bitch is breastfeeding on the front cover. Love it. And so basically the whole galaxy wants to shut them down, and they go through a lot of struggles. There's a lot of like, you know, their marriage isn't perfect. They had to give up pretty much both of their families to do this. They turned their back on both of their cultures, but they had to decide, like, would they want to still live in those cultures if they would treat each other that way. There are some trigger warnings in this. These are very graphic as well. There is a lot of there's a lot of sex and violence and nudity in these, but it's amazing to me. I mean, it's a mix between like a Star Wars and what's another good way to describe it? Because it's not just Star Wars, but it's so good, guys. Amazing. I want to get like the hardback volumes of them too because they're beautiful, but those are really expensive. So that was my next favorite. Then I have Night of Flame by Jordan Rivet. So I haven't been talking about these books as much lately because I finished this series. This is the final one in her series, The Duel of Fire, or Steel and Fire. Jordan Rivet is a self-published author. You can buy all her books on Amazon. Also, they're in audio, and a lot of people really love the audiobooks for these. I haven't listened to those. But this was the finale of the series, and I loved how the author brought everything together. I loved her characters. I loved how they worked through the problems at the end. I loved how the main couple was so faithful to each other, even through, you know, all of their struggles. They believed in each other, they fought for each other, and I loved it. I loved all the younger characters. Like, it's really about like a whole family. There's 3 siblings and Dara, and it's so good. I used to talk about this series all the time. There's a new series she started called The Watermite Thief, the Queen's Assassin series, I think. I just wanted to wait for a few more books to be out just because I love them so much. But I really want to read those books too. Yeah, I love this series. There is fighting, there is elemental magic, there is dragons. It's such a cool series. I love it so much. Next up, which I don't have with me right now because a couple of these I borrowed to my sister to read, was Lifelike by J. Kristoff. So excited. The sequel to this comes out in just a couple of weeks. This is an Anastasia retelling, but told in a post-apocalyptic United States. There's a main girl named, just forgot her name right now. Sorry, my brain is shorting out, but it's amazing. There is artificial intelligence. There is a retelling of the tragedy of Anastasia. There are these robots called Lifelikes that are too much like humans, and so they're outlawed. And the main character gets entangled with one, and she realizes that she knows him from her past, but she can't remember it because her memory has been tampered with. And what that implication means and what's happened to her is very important, obviously. And I'm being really vague, but I absolutely love this story. I listened to audio and read it, and I had a great time, and I can't wait for DV8 to come out. I just loved it, and people critique it a lot. I don't know. J. Kristoff went through like a heyday, and now people like criticize him all the time, and I love him. I love the way he writes. I love how flowery it is and like like I love it. I've loved everything I've read by him so far. So that's one of my favorite books of the year. Next up, I have A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kimmerer. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it was Bridget's first foray into young adult fantasy. This was so cool. The main character, Harper, is badass. She has cerebral palsy, and so she struggles with that in some ways, but she doesn't let it hold her back. We have a beast and the captain of his guard who are trying to save their country, and they need Harper to help them. But they don't know how to make that happen. There is an evil witch and another country that's trying to take over her, the prince's country, because it's weak right now. And it's amazing. I loved it so much. I thought it might be overhyped, but I loved it, and I can't wait for A Heart So Fierce and Broken to come out next year. I am into it. I mean, for me, it was almost as good as ACOTAR. And that's high up there for me. Like, A Court of Thorns and Roses is one of my favorite Beauty and the Beast / East of the Sun, West of the Moon retellings ever. And I also love this. So, great. Then I have Dry by Neil and Jared Schusterman. This is on the brink of disaster novel. California, the taps dry up, and it's called The Tap Out. And so you have a few different young adults. You have one who, they just lead a pretty normal family life, and when the taps go out, they try to get as much water as they can so they can live. Then we have Kelton and his family, who are preppers, and they have a bug out where they have enough water and food to last for a long time. And the whole block like knows what they have. And so it's kind of scary because when people start running out of water, it goes a little nuts. And then we have a couple other characters. We have a younger kid who's only like 12, who's there with his sister. That's the normal family. And then there's some other characters that it would spoil for me to explain who they are. But I really loved this. I listened to this one on audio, and like the authors read parts of it, and it's told in a really cool way. Like, it tells you what day you're on. And you know, as people get weaker and more thirsty, like the way their brains work changes a little bit. It was a really scary book because it feels like you're at the start of like The Walking Dead, and they call the people who haven't had water in a couple days water zombies because they start going nuts and will do anything for some water, and it's just crazy. But I loved it. It was such a good ride. It makes me really excited to read Scythe and Thunderhead because I was just so into Dry. It was so good. And then finally, my newest addition to the list is Lovely War by Julie Berry. I again did a dedicated review for this, which you can find up here. This is a story of Aphrodite telling two love stories that she helped happen during World War I. And there is tragedy and love and beauty and magic, and other gods help tell the story as well, including Ares, Hephaestus, Apollo, and Hades all help tell the story. I cried, I laughed, I swooned, and it was tragic and beautiful. And again, not a type of story I read too much because I'm a bleeding heart, and especially for war stories, they crumble me. But I loved this story. Really highly recommend. So these are my favorite books so far this year. Tell me what some of yours might be. And yeah, I'm not going to do a worst book of the year so far because I don't have that many, and so I might as well save them for the end of the year because who knows how many more we'll get. But thanks so much for stopping by. I put up new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can see some more videos right now. Bye!